Caroline's Treats by Dixie Lee Petrakis. Illustrated by Roberta Collier Morales. Caroline's Treats by Dixie Lee Petrakis. Illustrated by Roberta Collier Morales. "Aw," cried Caroline. "Jinx licked my nose." Caroline was holding the cutest puppy she had ever seen. His nose was touching hers. Caroline was rapidly falling in love. Of course, Caroline fell in love just about every Saturday. That's how often she visited the Westport Animal Shelter. The shelter was Caroline's favorite place in the world. One week, she'd be enchanted by a shy cat, the next by a playful dog. Every animal was special in its own way. But Jinx was the most special of all. As soon as she met him, Caroline knew he was the pet for her. "Can I take Jinx home with me?" Caroline asked Miss Preston, the woman in charge of the shelter. "He can't go home with anyone quite yet," said Miss Preston. "His leg is injured, and it will take time to heal. Jinx had been hit by a car, so he had a cast on one leg. Once he got better, he would need a new home." Caroline's friend Maria was petting a cat nearby. "You probably should ask your parents before you adopt a dog anyway," said Maria. "Not a bad idea," said Maria's mother, Mrs. Alvarez, who had driven the girls to the shelter. "I know they'll say yes," said Caroline. As Mrs. Alvarez drove Caroline home, Caroline tried to imagine walking Jinx through the neighborhood. Having her very own dog would be 1,000 times better than going to visit the shelter. As soon as she walked in her front door, Caroline started babbling to her mom about Jinx. "Well, I sure hope Jinx gets better soon," said Mom, who was fixing a shelf in the kitchen. "Miss Preston told me the shelter is about to close." "What?" asked Caroline, her voice rising with alarm. "When?" "I ran into her at the hardware store yesterday. Janice said the shelter can't afford to stay open," Mom explained, as she drove a screw into the wall. "Oh no!" Caroline cried. "But the shelter can't close. What will happen to all of the animals there?" Suddenly, Caroline brightened. "We'll just have to raise the money to save it," she said, with a smile spreading across her face. Mom smiled back and shook her head. "You're quite the determined one, aren't you?" she said over the noise of the drill. That afternoon, Caroline met with her friends to figure out how to save the shelter. Everyone had a suggestion. "Maybe we could have a lemonade stand," said Maria. "Or how about a pet sitting business?" asked May. "I think a dog washing service," said Victor. "Or what about a bake sale?" said Caroline. She paused for a moment. "I know," she said excitedly. "We can do them all. We'll hold a Save the Shelter fair." Everyone thought that was an awesome idea. The kids met all week to plan the fair, which would happen a week from Saturday. May and Caroline put up posters. Maria contacted the local TV news and newspaper to get more publicity for the fair and for the animal shelter. Caroline had a surprise in mind for the bake sale. She created a brand new cookie recipe. True, she had never baked cookies or anything before, but she just had a special feeling about these cookies. It was as if Jink's happy spirit was in every one. "What do you think I should call my cookies?" Caroline asked her mom, who was helping her. "How about Caroline's Treats?" said Mom. By the day of the fair, Caroline had made hundreds of cookies. She and her parents wrapped the cookies in small bags and tied them with a bow. Caroline carefully wrote "Caroline's Treats" on every single bag. It was a beautiful sunny day. A big crowd showed up. Everyone brought pets. There were dogs, cats, snakes, even a couple of parrots. Everything was a big success, except Caroline's bake sale. No one was buying Caroline's treats. "What's in these anyway?" asked Dad as he was taking a bite. He made a funny face as he tried to chew. I can't remember exactly," said Caroline. "Oats and a little milk and some grated carrots and stuff like that. Don't you like them?" "Well, they're very unusual," Dad said. "They're just a little hard to chew." Just then, Mr. Larson came by with his dog, Bowser. Dad tossed Bowser the rest of the treat, and in no time, Bowser had finished it and was looking around for more. "Great doggy treats," said Mr. Larson. "I'll take a bag." "No, make that 3 bags." Mr. Larson must have told other people about the treats, because before long, more and more people with dogs were stopping by. Soon customers were lining up around the block to buy Caroline's treats for their dogs. Mrs. Alvarez even bought some for her cat, Bruno. After just an hour, Caroline was almost out of cookies, and customers were still lining up. Then a woman with a microphone and a TV camera crew came over to the bake sale booth. It was Sarah Lockwood from the Evening News. She asked Caroline about her doggy treats, the fair, and the animal shelter. "You'll be on the news tonight," said Sarah as she and her crew were leaving. That night, Mom, Dad, and Caroline were exhausted. They flopped down on the couch to watch the local news. First came a story about the town's new fire trucks, which were equipped with extra long hoses. "Hoses schmoses," said Caroline. "What about the fair?" "Be patient, Caroline," said her dad. Then there was a story about the biggest pumpkin in Rhode Island. Then came the weather report. Caroline was discouraged. "I guess that reporter was wrong. They're not going to show the fair at all. And we really needed that publicity. I'm sure we didn't earn enough money ourselves. Now it's all going to be a big waste of—" Just then, Sarah Lockwood appeared on the screen. The final story was about the fair. There was Caroline on TV, surrounded by happy dogs munching her treats. The next morning, Caroline got a phone call. "Hello, is this Caroline Roberts?" said a man's voice. "This is Peter Petsky of Petsky's Pet Palace. I saw you on the news. I'd love to sell Caroline's treats in my stores. I'd also like to contribute money to the Westport Animal Shelter." Caroline's heart pounded as she told Mom and Dad the news. "Sounds like you just saved the shelter," they said. The next Saturday, Caroline made her usual stop at the shelter. But it was anything but a typical visit. A big crowd had gathered there to see Caroline give Miss Preston a check for the fair money, and to celebrate the shelter's survival. Peter Petsky was there too. "Thanks to all of you," said Miss Preston. "And Caroline, I have a special surprise for you." Miss Preston opened a door. Out ran Jinx, with his leg completely healed. He jumped right into Caroline's arms. "Now this is the best treat of all," Caroline said. Target vocabulary: afford, block, contacted, customers, earn, figure, raise, spreading. Expand your vocabulary. Contribute, determined, discouraged, exhausted, publicity, suggestion, survival. Target skill, understanding characters. Tell why characters act as they do. Target strategy, analyze, evaluate. Think about what you read, then form an opinion about it. Genre: realistic fiction is a story with events that could happen in real life.